The UK column live. It's Friday the 19th of October. It's fantastic weather outside, so we're all beaming inside. And we have a very special programme for you today, packed full of guests. We have today with us Patrick Henningsen, which will be talking about the FBI story, as well as George Galloway and Ben Fellows. We have Michael Murrin from Preston talking about the Jimmy Savile scandal. And we have Kevin Ball from Ireland, who will be talking about the Irish referendum and the state's attempt to take more power over families. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing exceptionally well. Can I welcome you back in the studio? We've obviously missed you.
It's been a while. It's been a few weeks.
Malcolm has had a bit of time off, but he's also been researching what's been happening in farming.
Yep, and food as well.
And food. But we believe that there's going to be some tremendous exposure stories coming out of foot and mouth CJD as well, probably.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And also those little companies that you thought were organics and were wonderful, actually I've been finding out that not a lot of them are, and they're actually owned by quite a lot of big conglomerates. So I think I'll be covering a bit of that as well.
Excellent.
In the future.
Good.
Shall we introduce Patrick again?
Yes. Are you there, Patrick?
Yes, I'm here. Brian, can you hear me okay?
I can actually. So we're doing better today than we were yesterday. So we had a few technical problems yesterday, but we can hear you fine today. Okay. What have you got for us?
Well, there's some breaking news today. Breaking news yesterday. Two big stories. I'm going to start with the story coming out of New York City in America. The FBI have been celebrating in the media because they foiled a terrorist bomb plot. This isn't just any terrorist bomb plot. This is a big one. It's a 1,000-pound bomb that was allegedly put together to blow up the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. But of course, it wasn't just a bomb plot. What it was the FBI informants they recruited, posing as Al-Qaeda contacts in the U.S., recruited this slightly mentally unstable 21-year-old Bangladeshi student in New York and brought him along and into their little world of terror and showed him how to make a bomb, helped him build it, and helped him deliver it to the spot where he tried to detonate it with their help. And of course, the bomb didn't go off. So they're kind of parading in the media like they actually achieved something. But this is, again, another case. This is almost a direct copy of the 1992 World Trade Center bombing, the first one, which was a car bomb. That one actually was detonated, and that was an FBI operation. So again, you have this kind of entrapment that in a normal criminal court would be thrown out. But in terms of counterterrorism, this seems to be the only way they can actually chalk up any victories in the war on terror, is to actually create the terrorists themselves. In this case, a clueless 21-year-old Bengali student in New York. So it kind of a joke, but again, dominating the headlines and also introducing a new narrative into the story of terror, which is that the Federal Reserve Bank is now a target of Al-Qaeda. So.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary events. It seems to me that there's a bit of an air of desperation at the moment, that Syria's not going as it should go. Even Iran is not going quite as it should go from their point of view. And of course, we know that the unrest and backlash in Israel is also growing. More and more Israelis and members of the Jewish community worldwide are now starting to speak out about their own government and concerns about the aggression that's being shown to other countries in the region. So to me, this is sort of another attempt to stoke things up. What do you think, Malcolm?
Well, I wonder, and I don't know what your thoughts are, Patrick, is this an attempt to stoke things up, as you say, within the whole terror sort of scheme, or do you think this is some way to bring about a little bit of sympathy for the Fed, seeing as they've come into a lot of bad press recently?
Yeah, this is a perfect case of killing two birds with one stone. Of course, they haven't killed any birds in this particular operation. And as Brian Gerrish rightly points out, there is an air of desperation, which is weaving through the whole narrative of the war on terror. You have a total fiction, a total fantasy enemy in this kind of fictional war that we've had to endure and have to spend billions and hundreds of billions, in fact, trillions, cost to the taxpayers in both Europe and the United States to fight an enemy that simply doesn't exist. Where are the Islamic radicals? Where are these terrorists? They have to actually create them. They have to fashion them through these complicated entrapment sort of scenarios, and then somehow show in the media that they've actually achieved something. So most people look at this and laugh. But Americans in the mainstream press and also in the government will look at this and sort of take credit for it like it's something that's really happened. And there's so many of these fake bomb plots, especially in New York. So this gives me definite indication that the actual, they want to close the book on the war on terror, but they just don't know how to do it. Because once you go so deep, once you get in too deep, like any psychopath, you can't really turn back. You're in too deep, and certainly the establishment has invested way too much in this narrative.
Yeah, Patrick, are you able to tell us anything about the sort of mood around the story in New York or the States as a whole? What's been the reaction of Americans? Are they swallowing the whole story, or do you think people are beginning to see through some of this stuff now?
No, it'll create headlines. It's very good for creating headlines right at the beginning, and then in the next week you're going to see a lot of dirt come out on this, and something that's really probably going to implicate the FBI. But whether the mainline media who ran with the initial fake story, which the FBI created, whether they'll actually come and do justice to the story and report a lot of the inconsistencies and the joke of it all is another story, because we're very close to the U.S. elections. So I don't know if they'll have time to backpedal and do justice to this story.
Right. Would you see that this this plot would be an assistance to Obama? Is the cranking up of sort of interest in? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You see this has been done time and time again. In the past elections, particularly, let's talk about the George Bush 2004 election with John Kerry. You have, and also in the 2007 run-up to the Obama victory, just 4 years ago, you had these Osama bin Laden video and audio tapes released right around the election time. And that is usually the incumbent president has control over the intelligence agencies and the government agencies, so they can time. This latest thing in New York is basically a PR stunt to make the White House look like it's tough on terror. And of course, if Romney gets in or Obama gets in, the agenda will remain the same. But obviously, the elite allow the two parties to fight over the scraps or the spoils of political power, but the agenda doesn't change. So certainly the U.S. Federal Reserve being a target, this will be a talking point. So people might rally around, conservative America or paranoid America may rally around the Federal Reserve of New York, like how dare Al-Qaeda target our sacred banking system. Yeah. But they'd probably be doing America a favor if they actually did do that. But, it's not going to happen because there are no Islamic terror cells in America.
Right, well, that's brilliant. Just moving across the Atlantic now, back into Britain and to George Galloway now. Did you want to talk, did you want to introduce the George Galloway story, Patrick?
Yeah, this is a fantastic story. This is getting good press coverage in the UK. A senior counterterrorism police worker or detective, I'm not sure what his title actually is, but he's been sleeping with one of Galloway's aide in his house in the Bradford constituency. And what we have here is potentially something. This was potentially a scandal because this activity by the police, according to Galloway, is connected with Theresa May. So here you have the Home Office doing some sort of a dirty tricks operation for whatever reason. According to Galloway, they've set up fake email accounts, which they've been using to pump out false information to all the national newspapers in the UK and all the social networking and stuff like that. So this has got the fingerprints of a government operation. Obviously, Galloway's a thorn in the side of the government in London because of his outspoken stance on everything from Syria to Libya to Palestine to Iraq. The list goes on. He's coming out on Iran a long time before anyone else to challenge that narrative. So, but this is an amazing story because here, this is a member of parliament. You know, he is a respect party isn't a powerful party in this country, but nonetheless, George Galloway is a member of parliament. So I think this is a significant story because you have the Met or the police and the Home Office looks to be conspiring to do something to discredit this politician.
Well, of course, we've already had a demonstration of what's going on in the background with the London plumber Ian Puddick that had a whole police terrorist cell unleashed on him, working hand in hand with the private security company Kroll. But of course, the other thing going on is that Theresa May is absolutely the spider at the centre of a massive web now of organisations which are spying on the British public, linked in through everything from the Fixated Threat Assessment Centre, which of course is a police and psychiatric unit, which has the power to section anybody in UK. They simply turn up on your doorstep and section you and you're gone. And we've also got the multi-agency public protection arrangement, which ties in people at a local level, anybody from the NHS, the local police, universities, education schools, all reporting on individuals and feeding information back. And we know, the UK column now knows for a fact that aside from factual information which is recorded on people, they are also recording hearsay. So if there's a rumour that the man at number 36 is a dangerous individual, that information is sucked into this MAPA system. And I will say from my own analysis, this organisation, backed up by modern computer systems, intercept systems and databases, means that it's 100 times more dangerous than the Stasi in East Germany. And Theresa May, of course, is the woman who's controlling this absolutely disgraceful surveillance on people. I'm watching the clock a bit, Patrick. Can we move you on to Ben Fellows?
Yes.
I've just got a little picture of him here, which Mike should be able to bring up on screen. This is the Express story talking about Ben Fellows, former child actor, revealed how he ran a gauntlet of paedophiles at the BBC, and he claims that the entertainment industry was rife with sex abuse. Now, this man has credibility as a witness because he's the man, of course, who blew the whistle on the serious failings of G4S security in the Olympic Games. What can you tell us about his revelations?
Well, I was a guest on his show a couple of weeks ago, I think a week and a half ago, and somehow the topic got onto the entertainment industry, and Ben started sharing his experiences as a child actor, not so specific, but we talked about it on air. And afterwards, we chatted off air, and he says, you know, I'm going to write you an article. And he wrote me an article, and I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, you know, no one's ever handed us a first-hand account of this particular crime before. So we went ahead and published it. And I then took this story and I sent it to The Guardian. I got no reply. I sent it to the Daily Mail, who did reply, but didn't do anything with it. And then Ben had been pushing it around as well, and the Express went and ran with the story. So this is a kind of a significant thing for myself as an alternative media person, is that very rarely does the mainstream media firewall get breached, where the alternative media is able to put a story through that membrane and into the mainstream. And this is a case where this has been successful. So, you know, for small operations who are, you know, trying to report some stories and do some journalism, this is a little victory for the little man in the alternative media. But the revelations, I'm afraid to say, there's more stuff coming out every day. People are coming out in droves.
Can you just summarise very, very quickly, because I need to move on to the next guest, today. Can you just summarise, Patrick, what is the meat of what Ben Fellows is talking about?
The meat of what he's talking about is that that Jimmy Savile is just the tip of the iceberg. This is an institutional, systematic rot of filth that runs through the entertainment industry, particularly what he's talking about the BBC and his experiences there, but also his experiences as an underage investigative guy on the Cook Report. What they did was the Cook Report hired Ben as a 15 or 16-year-old to go into Westminster as a sort of little honey trap for some of these politicians in Westminster who had a, let's say, an interest in young boys. And they were successful in luring some of these guys out. That's in the article. Some names are mentioned in there regarding that story, and also at the BBC, and also in the entertainment and the musical world, fake castings, and also threats or offers from producers to say, look, if you come and you do this with me, I'll make you a star and I'll give you the top part in this top production.
Right.
And that was dangled in front of him many times. Ben was one of the lucky ones where he was able to wiggle out of countless situations, but very closely could have really been seriously abused on a few occasions, which he outlined in this article.
Right, thank you very much for all of that, Patrick. We're going to move on now to our next guest on the show. We'll just see whether he's available online. And this is a very brave gentleman called Michael Murrin. And he's come onto the scene by publishing a report that links Jimmy Savile to the Paedophile Information Exchange. And the significance of this move is that basically, or this information rather, the significance of this information is that this starts to show the scale of the Jimmy Savile affair. It's not just Jimmy Savile. We've now got links, as you've just heard, into the higher echelons of British government and society. And now we're seeing the lobbying groups, people who were lobbying that there should be no age of consent, that anything could go. It didn't matter how young the children were. And this really starts to open up the debate and the investigation as to what was going inside the BBC. So, Michael, have we got you on the phone today?
Yes, you have, Brian.
Okay.
Yes, you have.
Thank you very much. I'll just get Mike to put up a slide. I didn't receive the photo of you, but I'm going to put up a little shot of what I believe is part of Preston on screen. And I've also put up your email and telephone number so that anybody with information can call you if they wish.
Well, that's lovely.
Okay. Now, I've also taken a quick shot of the press release that you've put forward. And I'll just read the meat of this. You've written to Lord Patton, Chairman of the BBC Trust, and you've stated, I am placing this information before you in this open letter as I feel that the BBC should now initiate a full investigation into these reports, suggesting that during the 1970s and the early 1980s, the BBC's editorial policy was influenced in favour of PI, that's the Paedophile Information Exchange. This alleged infiltration of the BBC by PI might also explain how Savile was able to operate as a sexual predator during his extended tenure at the BBC without challenge and or prosecution. So there we are. Michael, what would you like to tell us about the Savile case and what you know?
Well, I think one of the things that your viewers ought to note is that an organisation with the title the Paedophile Information Exchange, if you can get your head around that, actually operated in this country publicly for 10 years between 1974 and 1984. Now, the organisation, as I understand it, had a very, very influential mailing list and membership. And the information that I was given was that I was given two names some years ago as to members of that organisation. One name that was given to me was Jimmy Savile, and the other name was that of a iconic Labour politician who was a cabinet minister in the 70s and 80s. He's still alive, so I'm not going to give his name out on air today, but it will be passed on to the police, who I believe already have it anyway. The organisation was very, very influential. It was seeking, first of all, to reduce the age of consent to 5. It was then, its ultimate objective was that of, which is also in the Communist Party manifesto, which is to abolish the age of consent altogether. During its period of operation, it secured very significant support among politicians, and I believe I'm correct in saying that that support reached a point at which they came very close to having enough support to actually consider tabling a private members bill in the House of Commons to reduce the age of consent in this country to 5.
Right. And of course we know that Harriet Harman, when she was previously involved with the National Council for Civil Liberties, that's now the organisation run by Chakrabarti called Liberty, but Harriet Harman was campaigning for it to be acceptable for people to be able to take pornographic pictures of children.
Yes, and I believe, I correct in saying that the Paedophile Information Exchange was in fact affiliated to that organisation whilst Harriet Harman was involved in it.
That's correct by the information that the UK column holds, and I believe that fact has also been printed in.
So this goes to show just how influential this organisation was.
Right. And
still is.
Okay. Would you go so far as to say that you actually think that the Paedophile Information Exchange was a central part in forming BBC policy on the issue of sexuality and sexual relations with children?
Well, I have to go on the information I received and how that information has been verified. Now, the past investigations that I've run, every piece of information that was subject to police investigation, every single report was found to be valid, and most of them led to police prosecutions. So I have a track record on the provision of information. When the Jimmy Savile thing broke, that told me that the information that Savile was involved with the Paedophile Information Exchange is probably going to be proved correct. And I have to go on from there to the other information I received, which was that the Paedophile Information Exchange was deeply embedded in the BBC, and that editorial policy was being manipulated in that there appeared to be no effective investigative reporting by any BBC programme like Panorama or anything like that into the Paedophile Information Exchange whilst it was operating.
Right.
So it seemed to have support within the BBC, and that is my information, that it was very, very extensive within the BBC. That is why Savile was allowed to operate, and that is why there was no effective investigation of the organisation by the country's main news agency.
Right. Well, of course, I don't know whether you will have heard it, Michael, but yesterday UK Column Live broadcast an audio clip with Janet Street Porter talking, and in that clip she was effectively chastising the BBC for having failed to take charge of this child abuse issue, the Savile issue, failed to grip it and failing to manage it. It was an extraordinary admission. She was more concerned with the fact that the BBC weren't managing the case than saying, my goodness, we've got to get the BBC fully investigating this. So whatever her connections, if any, with the Savile case itself, her attitude seems to show that the BBC is embedded in this attitude of cover-up, and perhaps we're beginning to discover why.
Well, I think that's quite right, and I think that what you will find is that there is going to be a massive, and there is beginning to be a massive attempt to make sure that none of this sees much more of the light of day.
Right.
So I'm not just asking for an inquiry by the BBC, because quite honestly, I don't trust the BBC to run an objective inquiry. What I'm seeking is broader than that, and I want to see the Paedophile Information Exchange was eventually prosecuted in about 84, 85. I want to see all the evidence, documentation, memos that must have gone between Scotland Yard, the Home Office, and 10 Downing Street related to that prosecution. I want to see those documents brought out into the open and published.
Right. And presumably you would think the same about the other massive investigation into paedophiles that was Operation ORE, which ORE, which Tony Blair put the gagging order on. Perhaps we're...
Yes, I think I am only I'm focused on this link with Savile and the Paedophile Information Exchange, but I see it as the first objective, and I see it as the beginning of bringing this whole issue out into proper public scrutiny, and just establishing exactly what has gone on and the full extent of the paedophile activity in this country.
Right. Now, I'll just bring up on screen the address of Lord Patten, because I suspect that some of our viewers and listeners will also want to take follow-up action. Just as a final comment, and I'll be delighted to look into this matter with you in more detail another time, but just to finish, what would you like to see Lord Patten do, having received your letter?
Well, the first thing I want a full response from Lord Patten, and I would like that response to be, yes, we will establish this as a separate inquiry to any other inquiry that they've already established.
Right. Okay.
Specifically focusing on the PI links and the PI influence over the BBC during the period 1974, 84, 85.
Right. Okay, well, I'm going to thank you very much for giving us that very concise overview of what you've discovered. I know it takes a lot of courage to speak out on this matter. We would like very much to stay in touch with you, and I think already we know we've got some interesting information to exchange. So thank you very much, Michael, for joining us.
Thank you for having me on your programme, Brian.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, goodbye. Well, what an extraordinary state of affairs that we've got in Britain today. We are now really starting to get in amongst the rot that clearly exists, not only in the political arena in Westminster, but of course thoroughly aided and abetted by the BBC. We know that on an international scale, the BBC is not prepared to tell the truth about Libya or Syria or Iran or Afghanistan for that matter. We've consistently seen the BBC let off the British government even when we're dealing with war crimes concerning Iraq and other countries. And now we find that embedded in the BBC is essentially a pro-paedophile agenda. And I think that there is much to be done if we are to get the full truth out about the rot which really exists at the heart of our establishment. Over to you, Michael, and guests from Ireland.
I couldn't have said it better.
Sorry,
couldn't have said it better. Malcolm, it's okay. I get that all the time.
I'm getting older. Yeah.
I'm not getting any younger either. Yes, so Kevin Ball now, I think, and we're going to go and talk about the Irish referendum on children, which I think is an extremely interesting topic, given that, as you pointed out to me this morning, a lot of people actually move to Ireland because they have such great protection for families, as opposed to this country where we seem to have a failure in the protection of families. Is Kevin online with us at the moment? Kevin, can you hear us?
Yes, I am, my friend.
Hello, Kevin. Nice to meet you.
We've got a picture of Kevin, actually, which we can. You take the lead.
Well, Kevin, could you give us a little bit of a background on your story regarding this topic?
I certainly can. We are fighting the No campaign in Ireland regarding the Ireland's children's rights referendum. The Yes campaign, as it is at the moment, is basically trying to present an image that anyone voting No is doing so against the rights of the child being provided by this referendum. And of course, it's the inverse. Ireland's present constitution protects children to quite a major extent. And one of the methods of protection is via the parents or the guardian being able to exercise the rights of the child under domestic law and the rights of the child under human rights law, ECHR Strasbourg. The proposed amendment changes things in such a way it creates a trapdoor in the Constitution under something that is known as, in the Constitution, as exceptional cases decision. The exceptional cases decision in the proposed amendment means that if this decision is made, and this decision can be made by any level of court, the constitutional rights of the parents and constitutional rights of the child effectively can't be exercised by the parents. So if this child was in an institutionalized situation and was abused, and at this point the state would become parent once this exceptional cases decision is made, then the parents could not take a legal case to protect their child if this decision had been made in human rights or domestic law, because their rights to do so are interfered with by the exceptional cases decision. The concept of this exceptional cases decision is rather like the placement order in England, where it places a child for forced adoption and dispenses with the rights of the parents at the same time. This is going over to Ireland, and of course the constitutional law has to be unhinged to remove this protection so that the children of Irish citizens can be forcibly adopted.
Right.
The end result of this is going to be that Ireland will become like England. And as we know at the moment, we've got Slovakia and Russia protesting about their children being forcibly adopted in England. So it's a very serious situation indeed.
Kevin, if just something I'd like to bring up on screen is your excellent quote that you've got on your website. I'll just bring it up now. I'll read it for listeners only. As you may know, Ireland has been a sanctuary for many parents to protect their children from forced adoption and attack by social services and the courts of the UK. This is because the Constitution of Ireland protects the rights of the child through the parents and the rights of the entire family at the same time. This means at present that it is almost impossible to forcibly adopt children in Ireland at the same time, giving greater protection for children and families from the state. The children's protection from the state is by the rights of the child being exercised by the parent or guardian, and those rights being human rights, constitutional rights and general legal rights, where the state can be held accountable for any harm or breach of rights of the child. This is why UK parents and European parents have emigrated to Ireland to protect their children from harm by social services and state bodies of other countries. So Ireland is our last legal bastion which prevents forced adoption and unfair attack on the family by the state. That's a very powerful statement. Just tell viewers and listeners where they can go to pick up the rest of your comment from your website.
Yes, obviously the link-up point is freethinkingvoice.org, where they can go to the referendum page and link into information there. We've got excellent information on there from a gentleman called Joe Burns, who we've interviewed on the Earth Needs Rebels show, which does give a lot more information there as to how this is going to affect Irish citizens if this comes about. The sad thing is that Irish citizens have been carefully protected by this constitution for decades, and they don't really realise at the moment what is waiting to eat them, as in we're going to have a change in Ireland. Instead of child protection in Ireland, which we have at present, where children, if they're harmed, are basically rescued, shall we say, by the HSE, and this is dealt with appropriately in the courts, to a situation where we have a predatory search for children that are unharmed, like the UK, on potential allegations of emotional abuse that might happen in the future once parents are cleared, as the sole reason for taking children that are unharmed for forced adoption. We're after what's happening here. They're after children that are unharmed for the market, the business of forced adoption, where a lot of money is now tied up in the organisations involved in this. They don't want to give up this business, and their children are the product that is going through this business.
Right.
Yeah, I very much agree, and I agree with the point that you made earlier as well, about how the state will, it will make the appearance and it will make people feel guilty for voting no against something like this, because when you start talking about children's rights, it would be abhorrent to vote against it. When in fact, I totally agree with you that hidden within that policy is a mechanism and the means to which to take away people's rights, and we see that through all means of statutory instruments, whether they be taking away common law crimes such as fraud is now a statutory, an offence. They're talking about bringing libel, and all of these are already common law offences. And it's the same with the Constitution in Ireland. And you're absolutely right. People have those long established rights, and they've had them for so long that we don't appreciate the value of them to the full extent until they get taken away. And we're like, as you say, we're left to the wolves, which is the statutes and the courts that operate those statutes.
I only today have been speaking with a gentleman who is a Law Society president, who has asked me to speak at an institute on the 5th of November to represent the No Camp in Ireland, where we'll have someone from the government there and someone from the Yes Camp. And during this conversation, this very subject came out about the constitutional trapdoor and how this was going to affect Irish citizens. It's so easy when you are protected by legislation to fall into a sense of false security of it always being there, not realising that it is a product of some excellent drafted law, the mechanism of the Constitution of Ireland. And I think many people in law in Ireland would like to see the Constitution of Ireland be adopted by other European states, rather than being eroded by these changes, which are to open the door for the UNCRC, which is only something really that is acted upon by judges to try and accommodate it, and there is no right for the citizen or the child to exercise the UNCRC because there is no legal mechanism to do so. And without that, it offers no protection to the child against the state, no protection to the family against the state. It is something for the state to empower alone in things like birth control. We're looking at vaccination being enforced, and medical treatments being enforced, abortion being enforced, over and top of the rights of the family. And that's what will happen if this constitutional law is changed. At the moment, that's protected. The family rights are there. Once they're removed, the state will rule over the top of those rights in whatever it wishes in lower law.
Yeah. Kevin, just so that we've got it absolutely clear for viewers today, are you linking these changes, these draconian changes, back to the United Nations?
Absolutely. This is global. The United Nations CRC, if we just deal with that side of it, is law that is in most countries that sign up to it. It is law that is not incorporated into the domestic law in any way of any country in the world. And that means without it being incorporated, it can't be exercised by the citizens. So it's a one-way law which the states claim to be acting upon around the world to so-called protection of children, but really it's used as state control over children to force them to be vaccinated, to force them to use birth control, to force them to have abortion, and whatever those so-called rights are interpreted by the state to be. They're not real rights of the child, they're rights of the state, as in Adolf Hitler's day when he originally generated the slogan, in the best interest of the child.
Right. And Kevin, could you just finally, could you tell us what is the mood in Ireland? How are people receiving this? Are they people anxious about it, or are people quite welcoming of it?
Well, it depends whether you look at the media coverage, MSM, mainstream media, or whether you look at the alternative media, or whether you talk to the people. The people know. If you talk to the people, you will talk to someone, no one's voting anything but no in this house, you'll be told by Irish citizens. And if you talk to the media, they'll say that the yes camp is in pole position. I actually have a study that was passed to me by Joe Burns that was published on the Irish Times, and it clearly shows, even at this stage, the no camp are 5% ahead. But we need every vote here from Irish citizens. We need to stop this. We don't want Ireland to become like the UK, with nations protecting about their children being stolen.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I mean, we know how hard it is to campaign against such issues, so we certainly wish you the very best of luck, and we think you've done a fantastic job so far, and thank you very much for being a guest on our show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Well, what a great show. Well, yep. Great in the sense of the information contained, not necessarily great in the context of the subject. That wasn't what I was trying to say. But
I think we're allowed to say that we're making progress when we've got good people who are clearly stepping forward to actually do something, and I think we're allowed to be positive and smile about that. Yep. The undertone, of course, is remarkable. We've got foreign nation states, not one or two, but a cluster of them, Slovakia, Italy, Germany at the moment, and others in the background, Russia's another one, talking about the British government stealing children. We've got hundreds of mothers and fathers coming forward talking about their children not only being taken by the state, but then abused in the so-called care of the state. And we're now seeing that major broadcasting organisations like the BBC not just suffering from paedophiles in their midst, but now it's starting to come to the surface that the BBC has been used to help promote pro-paedophile policies. So if we're really going to get to grips with what's going on in this country, we've got to deal with the criminals that are now in power and in Westminster. And broadcasting the truth is part of that. So thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great to have Malcolm back.
Back in the sunshine. He'll
tell me off for that shortly. And we look forward to seeing you again on Monday. So have a good weekend.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you.